Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, July 12th, 2021 Maplewood City Council meeting. This is our very first meeting in person, and I want to welcome everyone here. This is an exciting night. 16 months ago, we talked about someday City Hall is going to be back open, and City Hall opened last week. And we talked about someday we are going to be back to live in-person council meetings. Well, folks, someday is here. It is tonight. So welcome, everyone. I want to say a special welcome to our two new council members. This is the first time that we have been meeting, that we are able to meet in person. We certainly have been conducting the business of the city, but we've been doing it through Zoom calls. And so this is our first time together up at the DS. So welcome, everyone. Welcome back, staff, and to all of the people that are here tonight for a very special night. So thank you. And tonight we have, I want to spotlight our new public safety director. Brian Beardeman is our new public safety director. He, of course, has been sworn in already. We'll have a ceremonial swearing in later on in our meeting. But I wanted to give Chief Beardeman an opportunity to say welcome to everybody and introduce himself at our first in-person meeting. Chief.
Mayor Abrams and Council, a little over 2 years ago, I was promoted to lieutenant. I stood at this very podium and said change is coming and that it's inevitable. I said that organizations and people that don't embrace change are bound to lose ground and stagnate. Well, Council, change came. And here's what change looked like. Change looked like diversity in hiring, with a 135% increase in the hiring of non-traditional police officer candidates, that being women and people of color. This change has made our workforce far more reflective of the community we serve. Change was a robust approach to community outreach. Community outreach used to be the job of the few. Now it is the job of all of us, with an increase from dozens of hours a year to well over 2,000, with a focus on poor and diverse communities as well as youth. Change was a change in philosophy, from officers merely responding to calls, to working with the community and stakeholders to problem solve and form those partnerships. Change was the creation of a police and fire mental health outreach team and the pioneering approach to better serve individuals suffering from mental illness with the addition of the embedded social worker. And last but certainly not least, change was building accountability, trust, transparency with the community. This was aided by the creation of the Multicultural Advisory Committee. Many of those members are with us here tonight to show their support. Their strong community voice has been critical, and together we have accomplished great things already. Maplewood Public Safety has evolved and changed and now embraces a more community-oriented, problem-solving, data-driven, and diverse professional agency. The changes and the success that lie in our future will not be because of the person standing before you tonight. Instead, it will be because of the men and women of Maplewood Public Safety that stand behind me. No chief can have success without the input, thoughts, and ideas of staff members at every level of our agency. I'd just like to close with a quote from Jim Collins. He said, "Great leadership at the top doesn't amount to much if you don't have exceptional leadership at every level, because that is where great things will happen." Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk Sint, would you please do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juneman.
Here.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. Thank you very much. Council members, we are back in session in person, and I just want to kind of remind everyone what we've got up here, because this is new, certainly is different from sitting at our dining room tables, I think, and running the city. But there will be a different rhythm to being in person. And I just want you to be prepared for that. We have buttons, you all have buttons in front of you. If you want to engage, if you want to participate in the discussion, all you have to do is hit that little button and the lights will light up in front of me. And what I will try to do is call people in the order in which they flip their button so that I can see that. Also, tonight, we are not going to do roll call votes anymore. We don't have to. We're all here. So we are just simply going to vote. You will all have an opportunity to add something to the agenda if you want to, under council presentations if there's something that you want to add. The rhythm will feel different. It took us a while to get used to Zoom, but I have to say that after 16 months of doing Zoom meetings, we got pretty good at it. So be a little patient with yourself tonight. Remember to use your buttons, and we'll all kind of get through. It's actually a light agenda tonight, an important agenda, but it certainly is a little bit on the lighter side, which is good so that we can kind of get used to all of this technology and how different all this is. Let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? This is where, council members, if you want to add something, I will add two things to the agenda. I want to add our tax exemption legislation and how successful we were with that. I also want to add kind of a fun thing that's coming to our city. The world's largest bottle of soap, actually in the Guinness Book of World Records, is coming to Maplewood. So it's coming to Hy-Vee. So anyway, I'll certainly announce that as well. So those are my two things. Anyone else? Kathy, Councilmember Juniman, what would you like to add?
National Night Out, please.
National Night Out. Anything else anyone wants to add? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Then let's go to a vote. All those in favor of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any nays? All right. That was easy enough. No roll call for that. Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes. We have the June 28th, 2021 City Council Workshop minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the June 28th, 2021 City Council Workshop meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? I can say that now instead of hearing none. Seeing none, then let's move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Any nays? I want to make sure I give that opportunity. Okay, then moving on, the June 28th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Make a motion to approve June 28th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes.
Second.
Moved by Villavicencio, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the June 28th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none? Then let's move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to appointments and presentations. Administrative presentations, the council calendar update. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This item is intended just to give you a snapshot of upcoming council meetings or workshops. Our next workshop will be on July 26th, and that will be a joint meeting with our Housing and Economic Development Commission, and we'll be meeting at 5:30 here with them. And I promise dinner will be provided. So that will be good. And then on August 9th, at our workshop there, we'll have our first review of the 2022 budget. So be ready for that. And then at the council meeting on August 9th, you will hear a report from Mr. Sable and Ms. Knutson on the strategic plan, our quarterly updates, and how that fits in with the ICMA performance management program that we are members of. In terms of other things that are ongoing, as we've talked about before, the parking space requirement review is still underway. It's part of our comprehensive land use zoning updates. And so they are working on that. I'll expect that back in the next month or two. And then just a reminder that on the meeting on 6/14, the mayor brought up the idea of having goats come into our community to remove buckthorn. And we've actually done that before, one other time. But Ms. Robbins is looking into the cost of that and talking to other communities that have done it. So she'll be bringing something forward for your review in the next couple weeks or so. Also, just a reminder, I think tonight after pictures and before we came into the room here, I handed out a worksheet for each of the council members to look at dates where they will be available for a staff council retreat in September or into the first couple weeks of October. And so I would ask you to get those back to me or Lois as soon as you can, because by the time if we put this off, the dates will all change for everybody. So we want to try to get that nailed down as soon as possible. So Mayor, that's all I have for you this evening on the calendar, unless there's other items the council would like us to work on or research. Okay, that's it.
Council members, anything else you want to add? Seeing nothing, then let's move on. Okay, council presentations. We'll go with you first, Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a reminder that we are having National Night Out this year, speaking of going back into normalcy. It is on Tuesday, August 3rd, and if you want to sign up, you can go on the city website and you look for Sergeant Tinus's name. He's the overseer. One more time. He's right back there. So it's a good way to meet your neighbors or meet them again after coming out from under our rocks where we've been forever, and sign up. We always have a good turnout. I hope we do again this year, and it's not that far away.
I know.
Thank you very much. I had 2 items to add. I am very pleased to say that we were successful in getting a tax exemption through the legislature at this last legislative session, thanks to the efforts of Senators Uyghur and Senators Kent, Representatives Fisher, Lilly, and Zhang. They were absolutely imperative in our success, as was a number of staff members. I know we were down testifying before the legislature the last 2 sessions looking to get a tax exemption for the building of our new fire station. So what does that mean? It means that the legislature approved that we do not have to pay taxes on all of the building materials, which means a savings of what we project to be about $500,000. So it was a huge lift by our legislators, and I want to thank them for all the work that they did for us. I want to thank Chief Mondor for all of his hard work, Chief Nadeau. They were instrumental in going down and testifying before the legislature, and it really worked out great for our city. That is a huge savings, and as some of you have probably seen, the new fire station is certainly the land has been cleared. I understand the building is going to be coming down in the next couple of weeks, and our new fire station is going to start to take shape, which is going to be very exciting. Check out what's happening over at Hazelwood and County Road C, and you can kind of watch along with me because it really is very fun to see this taking shape. We really need this new fire station, so it's a very important thing. And the other thing I wanted to add was something kind of fun coming to Maplewood. It is I have to look at this, it's the world's largest bottle of soap. It is going to be at our Hy-Vee here in Maplewood on July 21st from 4 to 7. And I bring it up because it really is it's got kind of a cool background. It is on a tour of 14 cities in the U.S., and Maplewood is one of those cities. The Soapbox is the name of the company that is bringing this huge bottle of soap around. They have earned 2 Guinness Book records for personal care donations. The bottle, you can't miss it if you drive by the new Hy-Vee. It's going to be 21 feet and 2,500 pounds. It is the purpose of it is to raise awareness for hand hygiene. And after coming out of a pandemic, I mean, we think that we all know about hand hygiene, but this is a really important effort. They donate, let's see, the company Soapbox is out of Washington, D.C., and they have donated 150,000 personal care items to communities. And that's one of the things that comes along with this, is that they're going to be donating personal care items in our city. For each Soapbox product that is purchased, they donate 1 bar of soap, and so far they have donated 22 million bars of soap. So it's really kind of a fun thing, and go out there and bring your kids, go get your picture taken by the world's biggest soap bottle, okay? Kind of a fun thing, Guinness Book of World Records. And right now, coming out of 16 months of a pandemic, it's kind of fun to look at some of those fun, lighter sides of things. So I hope I plan on going out and taking a look at it. I mean, you got to take a look at, something that's 21 feet tall and 2,500 pounds of soap. So anyway, with a little levity there, now we're going to go into the ceremonial swearing in for our new public safety director. And this is going...
I have this one.
Oh, what?
Give the report, or are you giving the report?
You're giving the report. I was just
We're a little rusty here.
Yeah, we are very rusty here. This is the rhythm. We'll just kind of work through this, but yes, I was going to give you the report.
All get done, yeah.
All right. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that when the mayor started talking about the largest soap, I was glad she didn't say like the longest soap opera, because that would really be a bummer. But now to be more serious, this is a great evening for public safety and the city. So we did an internal process this year to replace Chief Nadeau, and Brian was selected and began serving in his new role just last week on July 1st. And he's had a very trying couple of first days, but I think things are going to settle down now a little bit, we hope, right? A little bit in terms of background about Brian, for those of you who may not know about his career so far. He's served with the Maplewood Police Department for nearly 20 years. He led such initiatives as the mental health outreach, community engagement, officer recruitment, training, and also was in the street crimes unit. Prior to becoming the public safety director, he oversaw the patrol division and also served as a canine handler and on the SWAT team for over a decade. He has been really instrumental in the development of our city's multicultural action committee or advisory committee, the MAC, which really provides an opportunity for our community to give voice on many important things to them, to our community, and also really involved in the department's strategic planning, which is a really big part of what we do here at the council DS as well. He also has spent some time with use of force, training policy, and hiring. He's also working on his master's degree from the University of the Cumberlands in Kentucky and received his bachelor's degree at Minnesota State University, Moorhead. So we welcome our new public safety director, Brian Beardman. And so, Shannon, you want to come up? And yeah, first we're going to do, I guess, the oath of office, right?
Raise your right hand. I, Brian Beardman, do solemnly swear
I, Brian Beardman, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of Public Safety Director
of Public Safety Director
in the city of
in
Maplewood,
the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're going to come into pictures down here. Oh, Welcome.
Thank you. Second time up here tonight.
Yeah.
I just want to take an opportunity just to thank a few people before we do pictures. So first, I would like to thank Mayor Lee Abrams and the Maplewood City Council. Your unwavering support for Maplewood public safety during these trying times has not gone unnoticed by the men and women who proudly wear the badge. Thank you, City Manager Coleman, for your confidence you have shown in me to be the Public Safety Director. This title comes with awesome responsibilities that I will not take lightly. Thank you to recently retired Director Scott Nadeau. I think a round of applause is probably appropriate. Scott's leadership is second to none, and he has left this agency poised for greatness. I also want to thank him for leaving me these giant shoes to fill. Always remember, Scott, that your legacy rests not within your policies and accomplishments, but what you have woven into the lives of others. Thank you to the men and women of police, fire, and EMS, as well as our civilian staff. Council, I'm amazed daily by stories of their bravery, their compassion, their empathy, and their dedication to serving the city of Maplewood and the community. I want to thank friends and retirees who took the time out of their day to be here tonight, and family who have traveled a long ways to show their support. And finally, those of us in public safety know that to be truly successful, you need the love and support of family. The hours, the odd shifts, the stress, missed holidays and birthdays can take a huge toll on family. So thank you to my two sons, Connor and Jordan, to Kaylee, and my wonderful wife, Shannon. Thank you for your unwavering support. Mayor, council, officers, friends, and family, thank you very much and good night.
Thank you.
We take pictures right here. This picture taken with us.
I'm only going to use this picture over the winter. All right, and then if you could tilt this. How do you do it with the camera? And I swear to God, I'm like losing my eyesight. I always get those out of focus. All right, good. Thanks. We're good.
Theater. Comedy.
I know. Look at it. Everything moves. It is like theater. Oh, we clear a room quick, don't we? Those are photos.
That was it. We took our picture and we cleared the room.
Whoever put the flag on.
Yeah.
I thought they were on the other. I thought they were always here. And I was like, oh.
Again? Oh, come on, I'm not there. Oh, something we said?
A photo of us and they all leave the room.
Enjoy.
The room has been cleared.
Your friend.
And moving on our agenda, the next item is the Ramsey County HRA levy. And Mr. Martin is going to tee this up for us, and we have Ms. Collins from Ramsey County, if you want to take a place.
Sure.
Mr. Martin, would you do the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ramsey County is exploring a property tax levy for its Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Starting in 2022, funds collected would work to preserve and create affordable housing for Ramsey County residents for what the county has stated would be a long-term resource to address the housing crisis. Carrie Collins, Ramsey County's Community and Economic Development Director, is present to walk through a presentation for the council tonight and have a discussion regarding this HRA levy. So if we can please bring up the presentation on the screens, and with that I will hand it off to Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Welcome, Ms. Collins.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I'll just wait for a moment here until we can get the slide deck up, so I don't have to look at the back of my hair. Do I have to click a power? Sure. And while we're doing that, I'll just add, I think Mayor Abrams knows this, as does City Manager Coleman, but I just grew up right over here on Prosperity Road, across the street from Wakefield Park. And so I'm a very proud native of Maplewood, and my parents are still there. And I think I put a lot of miles in over the bridge over here on my rollerblades, and just had such a wonderful childhood experience. And I have to say that I am absolutely pleased at the improvements to Wakefield Park. It is just a wonderful celebration of culture and family gatherings, and after the last 16, 18 months we've had, to see that level of convening and human interaction and recreation is just extremely wonderful. So, well done. I'm here today, thank you so much for the invitation to talk about kind of the why Ramsey County has been exploring a Housing and Redevelopment Authority levy at this time, and to kind of talk through what we've been up to the last year and a half. And so I'll just go like this. I started at Ramsey County about 2.5 years ago now. Prior to that, I was the Roseville Community Development Director, and so although the county manager likes to cringe as I say this, my whole career I've been a city person, and so I'm a city person with a county title, and so that is the world that I know. And so I'm kind of came into the position with the goal to strengthen relationships with our local communities and to ensure no duplication of services and programs and initiatives. And to best do that, we first did an inventory of kind of where do we sit in terms of a regional economy in comparison to that of our peer counties. And so we started to identify kind of the pillar programs that counties offered and tried to identify how do the counties fund these. And so you'll see Ramsey County in the green. We added in the last 2 years those 2 red check marks, the Open to Business Program and Corridor Planning Fund. Those were 2 recent additions in the last 2 years. But as you can see, in comparison to our peer counties, we were absent many of the initiatives and the programs that other counties offered. We did have a legally created Housing and Redevelopment Authority that was created in the early 90s, but we never historically levied underneath it. And so unlike the other peer counties, we were the only county in the metro to not levy. So we started to look at, well, absent these resources or absent this particular tool, what can we do in the interim? And those were the 2 red marks, the Open to Business and the Corridor Planning. So when I came on board, about 2.5 years ago, I heard a lot from the communities, and I shared in the thoughts that the county needs to take more of a leadership role in terms of the kind of programs, initiatives. They were kind of tangentially at the table, but they didn't fund various redevelopment projects. They didn't kind of lean in as kind of a proactive leader. They're very reactive, and they're oftentimes the last funds in. So I knew we wanted to kind of migrate over into a proactive role at the county. However, we had minimal staff. So when I came on board, it was me, and then it was kind of an isolated project manager who was leading 2 very large redevelopment projects, and then we had our HUD kind of grant administrators. And so we had to kind of build our department and build our team. And the city partners were saying, we need more from you in terms of redevelopment and housing project assistance outside of the kind of entitlement programs that you get from HUD. Greater MSP also identified that Ramsey County was lacking a presence to kind of position our county for redevelopment opportunities. And they said oftentimes site selectors outside of the region will go to the county site to see what's available. And we had maybe 2 sentences on a static web page. So we knew we had to rectify that. And then we heard from the business community that the resources across our communities weren't well understood. So I think within 3 weeks of starting, the city of St. Paul handed me this like static packet. It was 30 pages of all of their various business and development incentives. They said, this is what we give developers. And I thought, oh man, what developer has the time to kind of sift through what's eligible to them? So we'll say that there was lots of room for growth and opportunity. So we started with creating Ramsey County Means Business, and that was kind of our business-facing platform. We wanted to make sure that every community in Ramsey County, regardless of marketing staff, communication staff, economic development staff, regardless of the size of the community, that every community had a landing page to display what they had to offer, available land, resources, the programs. And as part of that, it has grown into kind of a major hub for workforce development initiatives, for labor market information as well. So oftentimes when we get kind of an alert from DEED or Greater MSP, they'll say, what can you provide us in terms of demographic information or labor market information for the east side or for Maplewood or for the county as a whole? We can go onto our site and we can collate that rather quickly. So this was launched December of 2019, and we had big plans for it. However, COVID-19 had other plans, and the platform quickly became a kind of recovery dashboard for our small business community. And through this new platform, we were able to solicit applications for 4 rounds of our Small Business Relief Fund. We're able to help our business community get to technical assistance providers through our business advisor in the Open to Business program. We were able to post webinars, information about all of the various programs coming out of the federal government and the state. And we were able to show the various coalitions that were coming together as well. And so that is still in place, and that is still evolving, as we know that the kind of economic impacts of COVID-19 are very real, and so that information continues to be updated today. Through the last 18 months prior to COVID-19, we also wanted to determine what is the Ramsey County's role in economic development. And to best understand that, we wanted kind of an outside perspective. So we partnered with the Center for Economic Inclusion, and we also partnered with a research kind of economic development anchor out of Pittsburgh by the name of Fourth Economy to do kind of the data gathering. And we wanted to best understand, where should the county be in terms of economic development, and understand our industry profile, our housing demographics, our trajectory in terms of economic development across a variety of pillars to include a fiscal health analysis, workforce innovation, where are we sitting in terms of our workforce, what skills and industries can benefit from our existing workforce, and where do we need to upskill some. Commercial corridor and place-based economic inclusion, job growth, to take a look at all of the various pillars with wealth creation at the center, trying to ensure that there's a certain amount of wealth equity that's being restored to our community. And of that became the economic competitiveness and inclusion plan, which will guide our work for the next about 5 years and 2 budget cycles. And that's where we align our budget with those. As part of that, we started to look at kind of gathering information. How does our kind of local economy work? And so this was some data that was collected that I thought was particularly interesting because it kind of shows the interdependencies that suburban communities have with the city of St. Paul and kind of how we work together in terms of commuting patterns. So there you'll see the top 10 workplaces of people who live in Maplewood include St. Paul, Minneapolis, of course, and Maplewood's right there at number 3. And conversely, the top 10 residents of people who work in Maplewood include St. Paul, Woodbury, Minneapolis, and Maplewood. And so you can kind of see, how St. Paul, Minneapolis kind of draw a huge amount of employment in, and kind of we rely on that both from a kind of a residential and a workforce side. We also learned in terms of looking at the housing information that over 65,000 households in Ramsey County spend more than 30% of their income on housing. And so what that means is that they are what they consider to be cost burden, housing cost burden. They're spending more than 30% of their income on housing-related expenses. And we learned that 1 in 2 renters across Ramsey County are cost burden. And looking at, if you go to Minnesota Compass, you'll see some of the data coming out of there. You'll see that Maplewood is pretty on par with kind of Ramsey County. However, I think it's closer to 56% of Maplewood renters are considered cost burden. And across Ramsey County, we've got our naturally occurring affordable housing. You'll hear the NOAA terminology acronym being used a lot. We have a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing, which is great. However, that also means that it's going to require a lot of reinvestment to ensure that those parcels, whether it be a single-family home or a multifamily property, that we are ensuring a certain amount of investment to keep them affordable as well. And we also learned that when you look at our existing population and the income, that there's a mismatch, that we are behind 15,000 units in serving those most deeply in need at 30% AMI. We are struggling there to meet the needs of our existing community as a county as a whole. And so we've got a lot of ground to make up. So looking specifically at Maplewood, and again, this is from Minnesota Compass, and so if you're unfamiliar with that site, I'd take a look. It's a really great snapshot of information on there. And you can kind of go down and see how you compare to other communities, not just in Ramsey County, but across the metro. In terms of cost burden households, you'll see that owner households represent about 44%, again, paying more than 30% of their income on housing-related expenses, whereas renters are closer to 56% or so. And it's just something to be mindful of, because obviously if you're cost burdened, that means that you may have an inability to kind of squirrel away funds to save for college or be able to pay for improvements should something happen to your home. We see that a lot as well. And so it's something that you need to be mindful of when kind of evaluating the housing stability of your community. Additionally, by income, you certainly are well aware of this, I'm sure, in terms of the kind of breakdown. About 20% of Maplewood residents are earning about less than $35,000 a year. And so that's hitting that kind of federal poverty line. And it's just something to be mindful of as we're building out infrastructure in our community. So as part of the conclusion of this vision plan, there were 8 strategies. 4 around place-based economic inclusion, and then 4 around economic competitiveness. And many of these recommended strategies are very intentional in terms of who we're serving, those that are most in need. There are significant gaps in terms of race when it comes to Ramsey County. You may have seen that report that came out recently from the Urban Institute that showed the significant disparity between our communities of color in terms of home ownership rates in the Twin Cities and those of white home ownership rates. It's pretty staggering. And so it's something that didn't happen by accident. And so as Ramsey County feel compelled to make sure that we are intervening and ensuring pathways to ownership. So that's a big piece of the plan. We call the housing side, the place-based inclusion, we refer to the housing continuum. I think so often affordable housing just gets bogged down in this idea of Cabrini Green, Chicago-style housing. And there's still this stigma attached with multifamily housing. But when you look at what's being constructed today, oftentimes you don't know if it's market rate or affordable housing, and it's being done at densities that are 2-3 stories. And so you see a lot of that. But there's this full housing continuum. There's pathways to home ownership and keeping affordable home ownership options real, and then also ensuring that we have enough housing infrastructure to meet the needs of the community. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then on the economic competitiveness side, we won't dwell on this now, but it talks a lot about how Ramsey County is underperforming in terms of business startups. So we need to get serious about that as well. So as part of this vision plan, it said, if Ramsey County is serious about being a solution to the housing crisis, then we need to ensure that all tools are available to Ramsey County. And that includes activating the Ramsey County HRA. And so, again, we were the only county in the metro to not have this tool at our disposal. A countywide levy would yield about 11.6, and this figure has changed because there was a legislative kind of nuance. There were 2 communities that had HRAs prior to 1971. So statutorily, they were allowed to opt in or opt out to a Ramsey County HRA. Those communities were the City of St. Paul and North St. Paul. City of St. Paul agreed to opt in to the Ramsey County HRA, and they represent about half of the tax base. And North St. Paul decided to opt out at this time and reserve the right to opt in down in the future. And so with that said, it's going to be closer to probably an $11.4 million levy with the absence of North St. Paul. But with that said, just like a municipal HRA, Ramsey County is restricted to use those toward the advancement of low to moderate income housing and for redevelopment. Now in Ramsey County, we could qualify everything for the most part as a redevelopment project because we're a fully built out community. And so we intend to kind of use the redevelopment side of things for, removal and blight mitigation, environmental cleanup, and affordable housing along the full continuum. So these are the 4 areas: housing infrastructure funding, including single-family rehab, weatherization, environmental funding and support to help with Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental research, and cleanup. Right now we have our Environmental Response Fund. However, that is strictly used for soil contamination. And we know that as you develop sites, you can find all sorts of stuff in the soil. And so we need to have more flexible funding to be able to clean up those sites. So that's a bucket, and our intention is to use that in that area as well. Redevelopment planning and assistance. Rice Larpenter is a great example of that. They were the recipient of our corridor revitalization grant, and we intend to keep that going. There were 8 proposals or 8 applications for those funds when we piloted it in 2019, and we know that our communities are really eager to kind of help do some visioning and market assessments, technical assistance along these kind of commercial and mixed-use corridors. So we hope to continue that with the funds as well. And then lastly, innovation. We've had, over the last 18 months, and with the amount of kind of CARES Act funds kind of flowing through, we've had a variety of companies and organizations come to us with wonderful innovative concepts and proposals, almost quasi-Shark Tank at times, where they're like, I've got an idea for you. So we do want to park some funds to be able to create, whether it be around green infrastructure, new kind of concepts around housing, solar or kind of environmental aspects to weatherizing homes. We want to make sure that there are funds to be able to explore in our economy to keep it competitive. So just to kind of ground us in, we do have our existing community development block grant and home programs. And so these are federal dollars that come to us, and then our department kind of manages those dollars. And so those funds are restricted solely to suburban Ramsey County per HUD requirements, and can be used for infrastructure improvements. The home funds can be used to gap finance affordable housing up to 4 units in kind of a mixed income housing project. And the CDBG can be used to acquire land for park space, but again, these funds need to be used to help low to moderate income populations or in low income census tracts. So what did we hear in terms of CDBG and home? We brought some funds to Minnesota Housing to help advance projects in 2020 and at the end of 2019, and we heard there aren't enough tools to advance the projects. There aren't enough resources to get projects off the ground, and so and there aren't reliable tools, and so we were able to help a few projects in this past year, and we hope to continue that with HRA levy funds through partnerships such as Minnesota Housing Consolidated RFP, both for multifamily and single family. No impact fund. That's to help kind of come in when those multifamily structures, like for example, Brittany Marion, those on Rice Street there, should those turn over, oftentimes, national investors will come in and swoop up those properties and buy them inexpensively, and then they'll flip them and they'll displace many of the residents and flip it to market rate. And so we want to ensure that the naturally occurring affordable housing stays affordable. We actually saw an example of that in New Brighton, where on the night that I was presenting pre-COVID, there was a council chamber full of people who were being displaced because the apartment building was being flipped to market rate. And so it's those types of things where we have started to assemble a map of identifiable, naturally occurring affordable housing so that we can bridge conversations with property owners to say, how can we come in and extend the affordability life of this property? But what we hear a lot, especially in suburban Ramsey County, is we've got aging housing stock. We need help in terms of single-family rehab, weatherization, and that I'd say is a big focal point. So we just hired somebody who has a lot of experience in terms of what we're calling wealth equity, ensuring that some repair does not drain the equity from somebody, or those that may be experiencing kind of fragility when it comes to mortgage assistance, that they don't lose out on the equity that they've built over time, that we can help kind of bridge that through these kind of economically challenging times. And so foreclosure prevention, forfeiture prevention and mitigation, single-family rehab to help grow that wealth equity, energy efficiencies, and our single-family housing stock are going to be a big priority area as well. Lead removal, healthy homes, that's a huge priority to the county. And then getting creative in terms of acquisition, land trusts, public land trusts, community land trusts. How can we help facilitate new affordability concepts in partnership with community land trust organizations to support mixed income housing? Environmental funding and support. Again, this kind of expands on what we've currently done with Environmental Response Fund to include geotechnical assistance, vapor mitigation. These are things that we've been hearing over the years that our communities need support in. We don't want, a vapor mitigation issue to be the reason that a developer takes, a business center outside of our county. So we want to come in and be able to get finance where we can if we're growing jobs in our region. Redevelopment planning assistance, growing on that corridor revitalization program to include pre-development funds. All right, so now you know what you want to do with the corridor. Now there's some improvements. Okay, who's going to pay for that? We want to be a part of that solution when it comes to business incubation and ensuring that there's a pathway for local investors to come in and invest in our community so that we don't have blighted corridors, vacant storefronts. We want to ensure a certain amount of vibrancy in our region to stay strong, competitive, and to ensure that there are job opportunities here as well. And lastly, innovation is just kind of, opportunities for the intersections between housing and workforce and job growth, looking at new models and products, resiliency. There's this kind of unique concept that the Met Council is exploring right now with solar installation. And so we've been in conversations with our Workforce Solutions Department about creating an opportunity for on-the-job training to get individuals trained in the installation of solar panels, which then, of course, helps with that housing affordability. We talk about affordable housing a lot, and that's, oftentimes triggers a certain housing style or product in the minds of many, but we don't often talk about housing affordability and reducing the housing-related costs associated. And so energy improvement is going to be a major theme with the HRA levy, and that includes solar installation and opportunities to create intersections between that as well. So next steps. The HRA, much like the Regional Rail Authority, and the general levy will be on the trajectory with the regular budget timeline. And so the board will be considering what that levy looks like at the end of this year. I know that our county manager has been working with our core budget team to find ways to reduce the general levy in certain areas and the Regional Rail Authority possibly to help offset the impact to accommodate the HRA levy. And so I think, I know they're working really diligently to try to minimize the aggregate tax impact as a result of this new levy authority coming online. And so, as mentioned, North St. Paul will not be participating in this round. The City of St. Paul has agreed to. As part of that resolution, the resolution that the board passed, kind of identifying its area of operation, includes that 50% of those funds will be kind of obligated to the best that they can, because these will be project specific, to the city of St. Paul, and 50% will go to suburban Ramsey County. And so that was something that we heard both from the city of St. Paul and suburban Ramsey County communities to ensure that there isn't kind of lopsided investment. And so in addition to kind of half of the HRA levy to suburban Ramsey County will be, of course, balancing our environmental response fund and the CDBG and home. So those kind of include the kind of areas that are funded. To identify and shape the kind of programmatic areas that I just walked through this evening, we have begun working with the city partners, and Mike has been a regular attendee, as has Jeff, to what we call these economic development summits. They used to be quarterly, but now in anticipation of the levy, they've gone monthly to help shape with our community partners what these programs are going to look like, what the process is going to look like. I know that that is as critical. The process is as critical as the program areas to ensure there's a level of comfort in terms of how the funds will be dispersed. And so we are starting to shape that. Just today, we hired 2 new housing division related people who will help shape these kind of program areas. One for multifamily and one for single family to kind of focus. And then in about 2 weeks or so, we'll have another individual start that will kind of focus specifically on the grant administration of our CDBG and home funds. So there's a certain amount of internal capacity building that Ramsey County needs to do at this time so that we can have kind of a more robust response to kind of working with our city partners on the program areas. And then as a follow-up, we are working with our communications team to develop a dashboard of the vision plan, and then to couple that with CDBG home, HRA levy funds, any ARP funds that may be used to advance the initiatives in there as well, so that the community can see how we're using all of these funds and to be able to track against it. And then our Community and Economic Development Department will be preparing an annual report that identifies how we use the funds as well for transparency and accountability. These are 3 kind of important links that help kind of round it all out. There's the link to the Economic Inclusion Plan. There's an HRA-specific web page. And then there's a fiscal health presentation, which I have to say is absolutely fantastic. And you can drill down to the city of Maplewood. So when you have time, Urban 3 did this out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And they did kind of this 3D visual imagery of kind of tax base and tax revenue to show like what are your high performers. And I think you'd be really surprised at kind of what areas are kind of generating a significant amount of tax revenue, and you can see that through these kind of 3D spikes, and what areas aren't underperforming. It can help you make some decisions down the road in terms of strategizing areas to redevelop. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And with that, a lot of information. I will pause for questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. I'm sure my fellow council members will have plenty of questions. I wanted to start off with a couple of questions, and I guess maybe I wanted to set some context for this. It's a concern that I have been rather vocal about, and the concern is that this is a new tax, and Ramsey County and Maplewood both in 2021 went with a 0% levy increase. I think we all know in the room that a 0% levy increase is not sustainable, and so I'm looking at what our residents will be facing in 2022, which is no doubt some type of a levy increase in Maplewood, clearly a levy increase in Ramsey County, and this new HRA levy. So really 3 increases coming right after a pandemic. And so how are you responding to that? I'm very concerned about it for our residents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that question, and I know that sensitivity is shared by leadership of the county and by our board, something that's really particularly front of mind to Commissioner Reinhardt as well. She serves on our budget committee. I would just say my role is to help facilitate the HRA, but I do know that the county auditor and the budget team are prepared to do this kind of annual walkthrough of what they anticipate the aggregate tax impact will be towards as we kind of get further along on the budget timeline, and so that will happen this fall. And they'll talk about the HRA, and they'll talk about the Regional Rail Authority, and they'll talk about the general levy and kind of how that balancing game is being played to ensure that that aggregate tax impact isn't significantly felt by our residents at this time. So that concern is shared, and I know that I'm not a party to the conversations about what the Regional Rail Authority levy will look like or the general levy at this time, but I do know that there has been conservative direction given to all of the departments to keep budgets as flat as possible, and in some areas to make cuts in anticipation of the HRA levy.
Maybe from a logistical standpoint, I know it's always challenging for the cities to actually get the budget information, the levy information from the county in a timely manner. And so for quite a bit of time as we're setting our budgets, we're trying to figure out, well, what's the county anticipating? We want to know that information as well. Is there any way that we could actually get the county's information in a more timely manner so that we could actually use that as we are formulating our budget? We just saw on our agenda that we're going to have budget discussions starting up here really soon. And sometimes, I will tell you from my perspective, it feels a little bit like we're in the fog when it comes to the county. And so there seems to be a mismatch on how you give us information. Is there a way that we can have a better interface with that? Because I think now is this is a really timely issue that we all have to be looking at this.
Yeah. I will absolutely take that feedback back to our CFO, Alex Kutza. And I know we have all submitted our kind of budget recommendations, and I know that there's been considerable amount of feedback. And so they're in the kind of analysis mode at this time. I think once things are looking more firm or concrete, then there's a certain amount of kind of public information sharing that will happen. What I will share with them is that the communities are eager to get that well in advance to help inform the decisions that the city's made.
Can I introduce you to our finance director, Ms. Paulseth, that perhaps you could be in communication with her and she can give you some more specifics about what it is that would be helpful for us. Because I know there has been this mismatch, and right now we can't afford a mismatch on this because this is going to have a real impact on our community.
Absolutely.
So that would be helpful. Ms. Paulseth, if you could follow up with Ms. Collins, that would be great. A couple of other points, too. I know that you indicated that 50% of the HRA levy is dedicated to the city of St. Paul, but the other 50% is basically, kind of the other, 14, is it 14 other cities? I don't remember right now. I think 14, whatever, the other suburban cities in Ramsey County. Basically, there's no dedicated, Maplewood being the second largest city in the county, we don't have dedicated funds that will be coming to us. And so I guess my question to you is, what are the priorities in your funding criteria? Because, it could be a number of years before Maplewood sees any money. And yet we're contributing to this levy. And so where is that? How does that fall out?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Great question. And I'll say, I think this is my 7th presentation, and that question comes up almost first every time.
And it should.
Absolutely.
We're concerned about our cities.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll say, so right now, Ramsey County has CDBG Home and IRF, and CDBG and Home are restricted to suburban Ramsey County. And so we have an internal kind of reviewing committee that takes a look that as the proposals come to us, we have all of the data that shows kind of a record of how those investments are made. And if there's a community, for example, that has not made an application for funds in the past, that certainly weighs into the decision. And so since the early 90s, we've been passing through these suburban kind of Ramsey County funds around, project-based with that in mind. Equally, Environmental Response Fund is countywide. And we look at parity across those funds. We try to, of course, it's project-specific, so it's not, to the dollar 50 to 50%. But we balance the City of St. Paul projects out with the suburban Ramsey projects should they qualify. And to your point about kind of prioritization and qualifications, When it comes to, single-family homes and rehab programs, we're going to be looking at partnering with lending institutions so that there's a certain amount of kind of resident-facing request. But for the most part, these projects are going to be requested through the city, much like they are with CDBG and home. Statutorily, when we fund a redevelopment or housing project with these funds, we need to get the consent of the municipality. And so similar to CDBG and home, we have a resolution of support accompany the application, and we're going to build out those 4 programmatic areas to say, does your project fit within one of these quadrants? And of course, when it comes to affordable housing, the more deeply affordable units are going to score higher. And so if you come in with a 60% AMI project, then we're going to say, we will fund your project, but can we add 30% AMI units? Can we help finance and deepen some of those affordable housing units, which is very similar to what we've done in the past with our home funds, which we do 4 units in typically market rate. And so we're going to be looking at the affordability of the project. We'll be doing financial underwriting and looking at project feasibility with our partners at Minnesota Housing when it comes to the multifamily side. But we're also going to be looking at green infrastructure and innovative requests. Not only is this a mixed income project, but hey, take a look at what we're doing with unique stormwater concepts and leveraging our funds with other partner agencies like we do currently with Minnesota Housing and Met Council, because oftentimes it takes, as you all know, 8 to 12 funding sources to advance affordable housing projects, for example, whether it be naturally occurring affordable housing or new construction. And so we're going to be one of many funders. And so we're going to have to work with them on what's scoring and what's feasible. And so, as I say, we want to be inclusive. The outcome needs to be inclusive, but the process needs to be inclusive. So we intend to, once the program areas are shaped, work with the city partners to say, how do we create, an internal infrastructure to review these applications that everyone's comfortable with so that you can fully understand why a project is getting funding. And then it's going to be these, through conversations with the city partners, what do you have in the pipeline? What redevelopment projects do you have in the pipeline? Kind of understanding what that pipeline is so that when you see the array of programming, every community can find an area that they can apply for. And so maybe it isn't a big redevelopment project every year, but then that means in year 2 or 3, oh, we've got one now. Oh, wonderful. Let's bring it in. Let's talk about how we can make this happen. So, when I was at the city of Milwaukee, I was in the Department of City Development, and we created these kind of internal working groups that did just this. And we had to balance our funding across 15 different aldermanic wards. And so I feel very optimistic that we can do this in Ramsey County. And we've done so successfully with our IRF and CDBG and home. But we're doing so in a way that includes partnerships with the cities that we just haven't had in the past. And so I know that there's a certain amount of trust building that's going to have to happen here. And I'm hopeful that through significant transparency and accountability in how we intend to fund and shape and use these funds, that we'll start to build that trust over time.
Okay. I think this council and our previous council, we certainly have done our work when it comes to housing. The numbers are out there. We've talked about this before, that 78% of all housing units in Maplewood are affordable to households making less than 80% of AMI. If you start looking at 50% AMI and lower, we're at 23.8% of our housing units fall under that category. We know as a city that we have some projects in the pipeline. And in fact, we've got a number of them coming forward that I think we have approximately 1,000 units that we expect to be open within the next 3 years. What has the county done to do some type of inventory about what's in the pipeline in other suburban cities? What's in the pipeline in St. Paul? Have you done that so that you know what's out there already?
Yeah, so I would say we certainly know what's out there in terms of naturally occurring affordable housing. We've mapped that out across AMI levels, and that's really important to us because we can't wait for the property to get listed to intervene. And so that was kind of, the way that we describe the kind of affordable housing game is, there's no use pouring water into a leaking bucket. If you're losing units to market rate, you can build new construction all day long, but you're just kind of replacing the old with the new. And so that has been a huge priority to us. City of St. Paul has a really robust pipeline of projects that they have. And I would say many of the communities are starting to kind of bring their lists, if you will, in anticipation for next year. I know of at least 2 projects in the city of Maplewood that have begun conversations with us to position themselves to be able to access these funds. One in particular that is interested in a range of 30 to 50% AMI units. And so every community kind of has those projects waiting in the wings. And it's just a matter of how can we leverage our funds to be able to go further with that of other funding sources. So we have encouraged developers to go through Minnesota Housing because it brings everyone to the table and it says, okay, you've got X, how can we make the most amount of projects work? And because we know of so many in the pipeline that have been having conversations with us, I know that there's a strong interest by the board to set aside American Rescue Plan funds, ARP funds, to help with affordable housing development as well. So it's not just the HRA levy, it's not just our CDBG and home, which are highly restrictive. It's how can we best position all of our funding sources to make ground for the last 3 decades of insufficient investment.
The 11.4 million, I mean, that is a lot of money, but when you consider that half of that is already going to St. Paul, that what is left in that pot to be really, shared amongst the different communities in Ramsey County, is there going to be more of a priority on scattered sites or, rehabbing, let's say, homes or, environmental things with current homes that are there? Or is there going to be more of a priority with larger projects? I mean, what does that look like? And who's going to decide that?
So that's through the program area. So we've got, we won't have the funds collected until 2022. And so this is a billing year. We've been working with kind of this, our relationships with the nonprofit housing development community to kind of understand how best to work with them, creating the most amount of flexibility so that they can't hit the Minnesota housing timeline, that they're just not out of luck until next year. So we're trying to create kind of flexible processes, but it's going to require this kind of building out the programs with the city partners by our side, because we don't have any interest in developing programs that aren't going to work, nor do we have the capacity and the energy after the last year and a half that we've had to duplicate or accelerate programs that aren't going to create vibrancy and infrastructure in our communities. And so, it's working with the communities to ensure that that process is done. The one piece in mind is that, in terms of suburban Ramsey County, there may not always be that big project to fund, which is why we want to ensure that our single-family housing stock has ample resources to be able to rehab and make those, weatherization improvements to keep that strong single-family housing stock strong. I had a conversation with one community or city administrator, and she said, 28 homes in her community were just, purchased in the last couple of years to a national investor who's then, fixing them up and renting them out. And she said these could be wonderful homes for new, individuals to build wealth in our community. And so, what can you do to help us acquire homes and rehab them so that there's more opportunity to build equity across all of Ramsey County? And I think, that's really our focal point, is to say, regardless of where you sit in the community, you should be able to have a range of housing options, and that includes home ownership. And so that's been a big amount of feedback, is the rehab, the weatherization, and pathways to ownership for our single-family housing stock. So when we work with the Center for Economic Inclusion, they said, please don't just, work on, I think they described it as poverty mitigation. You need to balance that with equity, building community wealth. And so it's those 2 predominantly areas that we're going to focus our energy on for 2022 and 23.
My last point, because all the lights are lit up here, and I know fellow council members are just chomping at the bit to ask questions. One of my passions is to identify those homes in Maplewood. We know where they are. We know where I'm sure other cities know where their homes are. Vacant homes, homes that are owned by banks, to turn those homes into a path of home ownership, to really build neighborhoods and to ensure that it's wealth building, it's getting people and families into those homes and returning them to the neighborhood. And so how are you going to help us do that?
Yeah, that's a huge aspect, is exploring these kind of unique ownership opportunities to work with, for example, our tax department. They have the TFL, the tax forfeited land property. And so oftentimes they'll send out a list to the cities and they'll say, do you want to acquire this property for 25% of market value? And in return, you need to keep it affordable for X amount of years. And oftentimes, cities don't have immediate resources to do that at that time. So we just hired a new property tax director, and she built out this really vibrant TFL program in her former capacity. And she said, I want to help do this. And I think that that's a great place to start, is to identify those vacant parcels, those blighted parcels, to get site control. That doesn't necessarily mean the county having site control. It means partnering with a nonprofit entity that can come in and we can help facilitate that acquisition to rehab the site, construct the site, and to create an opportunity for home ownership. That has been something that has been echoed regardless of suburban or city of St. Paul. That's something that's very, intriguing to much of the county, and that's something that we've had our down payment assistance program, but we haven't played more of a aggressive role in terms of site control or conveyance or gap financing when it comes to kind of publicly held land. And so that's something that we'll be exploring as well.
So I'm going to yield to our other council members who are chomping at the bit with questions. Councilmember Juniman was the first one to push her button.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment, and then I'll ask questions, is coming late to the table. Since 2004, I've been sitting at this desk asking, when are we going to be able to do housing rehab? Because we have so many homes in that gap. They're old, and somebody can buy it, and that's all they can do to it. And it keeps going on and on. So that in itself could gobble up a lot of money. That being said, you talked about 3 new hires so far and another hire in 2 weeks. So what's the upper number for how many people we need to hire, and what is that going to take part of this funding?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you, Councilmember Juniman. We have set a goal internally that less than 10% of the HRA levy funds will go towards staffing. I'll say that, whether it be, business development or redevelopment, those staff are going to be funded through a variety of sources. So, for example, our economic development specialist, Rick Howden, he's going to be predominantly focused on business development, rendering him ineligible to be funded via the HRA levy, and so he will be funded through the general levy. Those individuals that are responsible for community development block grant and home administration, there's a percentage associated with those federal funds to go toward admin. So much of their staff or those staffing costs will be paid out of CDBG and home. And so once you look at the kind of percentage breakdown, it actually creates, a far less of a percentage than even 10%.
Okay.
But our goal is to get the funds out to the community. That was our intent.
Okay, thanks. And then you referred to the funding decisions and the application process. Is there anything more definite yet about what the application process might look like and who's going to make the decisions?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So we didn't find out if the City of St. Paul was kind of in or out until I think it was May 27th. And so we were kind of hesitant to figure out that process until we understood the extent of the levy. So we didn't know if this was going to be a $6 million levy or an $11.3 million levy, which obviously informs the extent of programming and what we can do, and it certainly also alters the built landscape a bit. So now that we kind of understand what that is, and City of St. Paul's made their decision, as has North St. Paul, that triggered the kind of monthly meetings. And our intent is to create programmatic areas that are, of course, statutorily eligible via the HOA levy, around low to moderate income, preserving naturally occurring affordable housing, advancing new supply, redevelopment assistance, environmental cleanup. And so we want to create these frameworks, but we're a little bit hesitant to say this particular area is going to be 3 out of 11, and this is 2, because we kind of want to see what's in the pipeline and have the utmost flexibility to be able to fund as many projects as possible and to be able to leverage as many funds, whether it be through ARP or Met Council's LCDA or the CDB, coupling with CDBG and home, to be able to sit down in a kind of consolidated fashion and to say, okay, does this make sense with our partner agencies? And so, that process is probably that's going to take a lot of work, because the statute defines what we can do with these HOA funds, but it's that particular funding kind of decision that's going to require us to ensure that we're working with our city partners and that they understand that process, and that we communicate that well.
Okay, this is all starting to sound like it's going to take lots of time. And I just say that because we've been doing this for years in Maplewood, and just not even 2 years ago, we had someone buy a affordable housing multi-unit building, 2 buildings, I believe it was, and they were old, and they needed a lot of updating, and this individual, I wish we could clone him and spread him around, because he was buying it. He was the person who had been hired by the previous owners to remodel it over 30 years ago. And he's been watching it, and he decided to buy it. And on his own, he is keeping it affordable and is going to be completely energy efficient. Solar panels on the roof, all new windows, Energy Star appliances, and we had no way to, other than to say thank you a million times, thank you. Would it have been nice to say the county has some funds to help you with the solar panels or the whatever? This is why we need to, with all due respect, some of this process has to be sped up. It's just, because when you start late, you have a lot of catching up to do. And we are already doing this, and we try to incent or help however we can. But as you know, that's very limited. And so I think the mayor's question was valid. And I guess I'll go one step further. Approximately half will be for the suburban cities. And so we don't really know how it's going to be prioritized. But let's get to the nitty-gritty of, let's say, how much money there might be available for the suburbs. Out of 11.4 million, so you take off possibly 10% for your staffing, and then you take that half of that and divide it up by like 14 cities. It's like looking a little small, but to make sense out of that, let's just generalize how many units of affordable housing could be built with half of that 11.4. Do we know?
Well, I can share a figure that I received, and this was focused on kind of the most deeply affordable units over 30 years. So 30% AMI with kind of the figures that we have. 30% AMI, 300 units over 300 years. So 30% AMI units over 30 years would require $36 million. So as you think about, for example, Hennepin County has been levying, I think they did $16 million last year. And the year before that, it was another, 14 or 15. And, we have a lot of ground to make up. And so you are absolutely correct that this is small potatoes when it comes to making like the major dents. However, the absence of this tool creates and exacerbates that divide even further. And so I think that is the Ramsey County kind of leadership wants to be a huge advocate in supporting the full housing continuum opportunities to build equity and to also ensure ample housing infrastructure. And we can't be a leader in that if we're not bringing all of the tools at the table that
I
we have
understand
control
that.
over.
And so this is just my input, but if you look at the numbers of it, and we're behind and all that, it just seems to me that maybe the priorities early on in this process should be about things like rehab and path to ownership, because the money will go further, and then people can be looking at their other projects and trying to put them together as you, hopefully not off the map, increase this over time so that it can actually do something. But from my standpoint, as somebody in a city that tries to do as much as we can, I think there are some other older suburbs. I know of a smaller one that would also, having talked to their mayor, would love to have some help with exactly that. Instead of, first of all, they don't have a lot of space. This is a small city. So they're not looking to do as much as we could do. But the point of the matter is, if you're trying to stretch it and there's need in that particular piece, I guess I'm hoping that your process will somehow make that come to the top as a way to get jump-started and do some good. It's just my own input. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Juniman. Councilmember Villavicencio, you're next.
Sorry, I'm getting used to this too. As the council member who is a renter and has worked as a participant under HRA, and I talk to a lot of renters, the biggest thing that I've heard, or the biggest complaint that I have heard, is that rent keeps going up and up and up, no matter really where we live, but especially on this side of the metro area, I would say. And so I was wondering, in the tools that you're developing, have you looked at any tools around rent control?
That certainly is a policy recommendation or something to explore within the vision plan. And that particular aspect I see as being far more of a city consideration. I know individual cities and the city of St. Paul have explored that topic and have taken a look at that. So I don't know if the county would even want to begin to impose that over the county, knowing that there's also significant nuances with rent across our county as well. But I think in that particular space, we would be able to, convene organizations, leaders that have kind of informed thoughts on that to be able to help communities make that decision. I completely agree. I think also when it comes back to the rehab side, there's this tug of war between I need to make this improvement, but I don't want my taxes to go up. And then on the housing infrastructure side, we see the degree to which we're housing cost burdened, and I equate that to a last minute registration to a conference outside of your region, and you're like, you can make one of two choices. You can either pick the hotel that's 4 miles away from the conference center, or you can overpay, double pay for your hotel room. And that's kind of what we're experiencing with our county, is we're seeing these increases. And so that's the housing affordability side. And so to Council Member Juniman's point, if we can get creative on the environmental infrastructure side of things to help reduce that, so that it's not just a singular solution, that we're trying to cover the both creating greater infrastructure to help relieve the demands on the market while also reducing the housing-related affordability costs. I think that that's really important. And maybe it's something that can be explored through rent control, but I also think that there's an opportunity to really rehab these really tired and aging buildings that, with weatherization improvements, solar installation as well. So Ramsey County is not going to solve the affordable housing crisis, but we can certainly, on the policy side of things, explore that as well. There's another policy level consideration that came up through conversations we've had at the economic development summits, including this kind of right of first refusal, to offer it to, there's, some incentive to offer it to the county, or at least notify the county. I think the city of St. Paul has either implemented that or is exploring that there's this advanced notice requirement before a property goes to sale, so that, there can be some intervention in terms of making those improvements, or even one drop of kind of governmental subsidy helps to elongate the life and kind of help keep those rents within a certain parameter of AMI. It's a complex solution to a complex issue, but rent control is something that is certainly being talked about around us. We're trying to identify what our role is in that conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Knudsen.
I will be brief. I was just looking at it. I'm the president of the Economic Development Authority. I'm impressed with Maplewood's investment in redevelopment. And it seems like along the way, we improved our affordable housing situation, but it wasn't our target. It was redevelopment. So I'm looking at this and thinking, that I got this vision of someone just pounding the table and saying, hey, we got to do something. So suddenly there's a new tax, and I'm suggesting, I'm not criticizing that. So what is exactly the target? And what I'm thinking of is, when you're doing this, it seems to me there ought to be a return on investment. And, when I was listening to you, that's kind of what came to my mind relative to assuaging concerned taxpayers. Is that something people in your group are thinking about and have worked through?
Yeah, I think, as we talk about how these funds are used, and although $11 million, or 10.5, depending on, the staffing related expenses, only goes so far. When you couple it with environmental response funds, or you couple it with CDBG and home, or the ARP dollars, we will be able to make more kind of significant progress in various areas. And so return on investment is something every community is sensitive about. They want to see a direct return in the communities because their communities are paying into that. And so that's where we want to ensure that every year we are seeing proposals and projects across the full spectrum from the city of Maplewood. We want to see every year New Brighton, Gem Lake, Arden Hills, every community seeing the opportunity to apply and have very meaningful projects, which requires ongoing conversations with city staff to ensure that those projects are equipped to make application. And so that every community can see the return on investment. And then if you didn't get funded, you know why, so that it can be retooled for the next funding round. And so that is, we are very sensitive to that. With that said, I think the Rice-Larpenter kind of corridor is a micro example of this idea of like regional economic competitiveness, right? What happens on one side of Rice Street is going to benefit the other side. What happens south of Larpenter is going to benefit north of Larpenter. And that's something that I'm particularly passionate about, because when I was at Roseville, I helped work with Maplewood and St. Paul on that as well. And so we take this kind of regional lens to economic development, where what's good for your partners across the street will obviously be good for the residents of Maplewood, because that's how our residents use the county. They don't stay necessarily, as evidenced by the commuter kind of behavior. They don't stay within the confines of the county or of the city. They use our county interchangeably, and that was evidenced predominantly too when I was at Roseville. We were attracting a major headquarters to one of our industrial parcels, and they wanted to know within a 2-mile radius if there was any existing or new affordable housing that was being proposed, because they wanted to ensure that the manufacturing side of their particular headquarters, that there was ample workforce within a certain proximity, that they weren't going to have to deal with labor issues. And what sold them on that particular parcel over New Brighton, was that there was a new construction affordable housing project that was being proposed just a mile away. And so when you think about it from an economic imperative, you look beyond these jurisdictional boundaries and see, oh wow, there's this wonderful affordable housing structure going up in Maplewood, which is going to have a huge advantage to businesses in St. Paul. Or St. Paul has this wonderful mixed income project happening here, which is great because then they can find work in Maplewood. And so that idea of that regional lens is something that, taking a step outside of my city hat and putting my county on, I see that interplay all the time. With that said, we are absolutely understanding of this concept of municipal return on investment. And that's why we're going to be very sensitive to ensuring that, A, there's a pipeline of projects coming in from every community, and that we balance out those projects much like we already do with CDBG and home.
Anything else?
Well,
Councilmember Cave.
You guys have had every question I had, so you know what? I really don't have much to add to it, except I want to make sure that, you know, the return on investment, because you're asking citizens for money. And our city staff and our community has done so much with revitalizing, with putting in new buildings, all the rehab we've already done. And so it's kind of like Kathy said, you know, when you come late in the game, and it's not you, but we want to make sure that, I guess I want to make sure that you're not focusing on, you know, too much money for St. Paul. I mean, a 50% cap would be great. 50% plus makes me nervous because it can go all the way up to 59. And I really think there's great. St. Paul's big, but we've done a lot here, and we're continuing to do more here, and we have a lot of plans going. And I don't want us looked, and not down upon, but I don't want us looked like, oh, they've already advanced so much. Let's get the people that haven't done anything, because that's an easy look to go look at the communities who haven't done anything, and we're advanced. So I want to make sure that we stay on the top like everybody. That's my comments.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've answered all of our questions. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. Thank you very
Thanks so
much.
much for the invitation. Appreciate it, Mayor.
And thank you for
Council.
following up with Ms.
Yes,
Paulseth.
will do. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember, does someone have a button?
Sorry,
Councilmember
I'm
Juniman.
not used to this yet.
I know.
And I think staff can do this, but could we get her presentation sent to us? Because normally, you know, we get it ahead of time, and we didn't this time, and it'd be kind of nice to
Certainly.
have some of those things. So,
Is that, Ms. Collins, is it possible that we get your presentation? Thank you. If you forward it to staff, to Mr. Martin, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And then,
Ms.
Mayor,
Cave?
yes, Mayor. A question: is there something that we could bring to Victoria Reinhardt with this, being our commissioner with Ramsey County? That, you know, do we want her?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, I mean, I know she probably knows what's going on, but I want her to know what we want to express in Maplewood.
We certainly can invite Commissioner Reinhardt.
Okay.
We can do that. In fact, I thought that she was going to be here tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Collins. All right, council members, moving on to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval of consent agenda G1 through 4.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman. Consent agenda items 1 through 4. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We have no public hearings tonight. We have no unfinished business. We do have new business in light of the fact that we are back together. We are looking at the resolution terminating the local emergency related to COVID. The presenter on this is going to be City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. You know, we started this back on March 16th of 2020, where the mayor issued a declaration declaring that a local emergency is needed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. At a special council meeting on March 16th, they approved to adopt a resolution basically to extend the mayor's initial declaration of a local emergency until further action from the city council. And tonight we're looking for that action from the city council to terminate the local emergency related to COVID-19. And just for people who may be watching, we did open our building on July 6th, and this is our first in-person meeting since March of last year. So with that, Mayor, we are asking for a motion to approve the attached resolution, which terminates the local emergency related to COVID-19.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. I have to say that when the council at the time issued the declaration for the local emergency powers, I had no idea that it would last for 16 months. no idea. It's probably good that I didn't know that it would last 16 months. I think we all kind of feel that way. But I am very pleased that City Hall is open. We are back in person, and that now I'd like to make the motion to approve the attached resolution terminating the local emergency related to COVID-19. Is moved by Abram, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the attached resolution terminating the local emergency related to COVID-19. Any further discussion, council members? Council member Duneman.
I have one question. What happens if some, I don't think this is going to happen, but if there's an explosion of cases and all of a sudden we're looking at it again, do we have to declare a new one or what? I'm just asking.
Mr. Beatty, we'll defer to you.
Mayor and council, it'll be deja vu all over again.
Yes.
Yes, what we've been living under for the last 16 months is two distinct but related issues. One was what you just heard, the mayor declaring a local emergency, which only lasts 3 days unless the council extends it, which is what you did on March 16th, and you're undoing tonight, based on the local emergency and the state emergency, which has now lapsed, and the existence of the pandemic, which is arguably still ongoing. The mayor made a determination that we would not have in-person meetings. That's her call, and she has now undone that. So should something happen, we would have to start over again, and the mayor would presumably declare another local emergency, again, only good for 3 days, and the council would have to extend it if you so chose.
Thank you.
Let us hope that it does not come to that, council members. It's certainly nice to be here with you. So we have Councilmember Knudsen.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think Mayor Abrams has done a great job. It was entirely seamless, at least from my vantage point and others. Actually, doing tabs and stuff like that was really quite nice.
Yes.
To get an appointment and all that. So, and I think people felt safe. They felt like they could rely on the city to be a mentor and to show by example. And I think that had a lot to do with your leadership. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And
That's
I have
true.
to say thank you to staff because I could not have done this and the council could not have gone through this without incredibly talented and supportive staff that we pivoted so many times. For a while, I thought we were spinning. We're going to pivot each week depending on what was happening. But council members, this really is a very nice moment in time, and I just want to relish in it for a moment. So.
But we did, everyone was hesitant, I'm sure. How are we going to do this?
Right.
And it amazes me.
We got it done.
How much we accomplished. The
Yes.
city kept moving, the staff kept stuff moving, not only for us, but for the citizens. It was
We
remarkable.
got it done.
It was
We got
remarkable.
it done. So thank you, everyone. And with that, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. And what a wonderful moment in time. We have no award of bids tonight, and so the only thing left, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.